Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for this Planet IT webinar around Microsoft licensing and its changing landscape. And I suppose the big question, are you ready for those changes? So this is one in the long and continuing series of Planet IT webinars that we've been delivering over the last few years. For those of you who don't know who Planet is or haven't joined one of these webinars before, just to give you a little bit of background around who we are and what we do, because we're more than just Microsoft. So at Planet IT, we are essentially the one-stop shop for all your IT needs. So whether that be from outsourced IT support, fourth line support through engineering and project delivery, backup and DR, phone systems, connectivity, ultimately we're your IT experts and we're here for you to lean on. And that's why we've put together today's webinar to talk to you about changes that we know are happening and a lot of vendors and a lot of partners aren't talking to you about. So we're making sure that you're very aware of what's happening, because ultimately it affects your business and the way you work. And we want to make sure you're as prepared as you can be for what's coming down the line. So I'm really lucky today to have my colleague Adam joining me. So we're going to hopefully tag team our way through the content today and ensure that you get everything that you need to know. So this webinar is being recorded, so don't feel like you've got to take any notes or anything. We'll share that recording with you as soon as we're finished with today's event. If at any point during the event you do have questions, then we have the Q&A section, which you'll see on the side of your screen. You can ask any question that you would like, and what we'll do is at the appropriate time we'll stop and we'll answer as many of those questions as we're able to. Any questions that we can't get to today, we will come back to you with. So when we send the recording out, we'll answer any additional questions we don't get to, because as I'm aware from the last time we ran this, there can be a lot of questions very quickly. So I suppose the most important thing to start with is we need to introduce some terminology to you as we start today. So the first bit of terminology is something that I'll refer to as NCE, or the new commerce experience of Microsoft. Now, it's important that I tell you this, because I'm the worst for abbreviating stuff when I'm talking, because it's a lot easier for me to say NCE than it is to say new commerce experience. But ultimately, it's important that you understand what this means. And ultimately, from a Microsoft point of view, what they consider this to be, and this is the transition from what we're now referring to as legacy subscriptions in Microsoft 365 across to this new standard. Now, the rest of the webinar, we're going to be talking around what this NCE change means for you and your business, when it's going to happen, how it's going to affect what you're paying, and all those pieces that come around it. But ultimately, if I say NCE, I mean new commerce experience. If we refer to anything as legacy, we're talking about the current method you're purchasing your licenses through. That's considered to be legacy as we move forward. So I've said there's a new commerce experience. So I suppose the question would be, well, how's it new? What is new? So the way to look at that is what we can do today versus what we're going to be doing moving forward. So from a Microsoft point of view, if you want to purchase Microsoft licensing, whether that's Microsoft 365, Windows licensing, SQL licensing, Windows Server licensing, you have open to you at the moment 6 channels. You can buy that on an enterprise agreement, a Select Plus agreement, an MPSA, an open agreement, via CSP or Web Direct with Microsoft. Now, ultimately for Microsoft, that means there's a number of different ongoing challenges to juggle. So things like the enterprise agreement, the Select Plus and the MPSA are termed agreements that have a number of years associated with them at the price and with certain services. CSP is done via a monthly or yearly method, and Web Direct essentially is when you as a customer are interacting directly with Microsoft and not through a partner like us. This really confuses the situation. It means that pricing is not the same. It makes it very difficult to manage terms and what licenses you do and don't have. So moving forward, Microsoft are simplifying this to 3 channels for purchasing. The first will be your enterprise agreements for large organizations, over 2,400 seats. Adam will cover that in a bit more detail later on. The second method will be CSP, which is similar to the CSP method that you're using at the moment. So that's the cloud service provision. That's purchasing via a partner like Planet IT, in which we provision you licenses on behalf of Microsoft. And then the final is Web Direct. Now, Web Direct is changing to only be for those smaller customers who cannot go through a partner like Planet IT for CSP. So if you're a startup business and you have low credit and you're not in a position where you can get an agreement with someone at Planet IT because you don't have the credit history to show that, then Web Direct will be the method you'll use to build that credit history up, and you're paying on a credit card, you're paying Microsoft directly. There will be a point where Microsoft will say to you, you have become too large for us to continue to deal with via Web Direct. You need to go to a partner, and they will point you in the direction of Planet IT as a gold partner and say, speak to Planet IT. They can move you over and transition your licenses through the CSP model. If you're currently purchasing a mix through CSP and Web Direct, then Microsoft will start telling you to move those Web Direct licenses across to your CSP partner, because they don't want to be transacting licenses via that method, because it's very difficult for them to support it and maintain it via Web Direct, whereas through the CSP model, we take some of that responsibility.
Well, firstly, thank you for the introduction, James. So Microsoft's new commerce experience, you'll see the date there, March 2022. This is the key date really to take from this slide, because from this moment onwards, you can only buy per seat or per person licenses through CSP. So if you want to buy 365 Business Standard, Business Premium, E3 or E5, for example, only CSP, well, CSP is your only option really. You'll no longer be able to get seat-based licenses on any other agreement outside of enterprise agreements, which also have dramatic changes coming soon, which I'll touch on in a moment.
Thanks for that, Adam. So alongside the fact that you won't be able to transact seat-based licenses via any other method, with the NCE, there's a load of new terms that are coming across. And by terms, I mean terms and conditions, unfortunately. The big thing is that Microsoft are going to start offering multi-year licenses, so up to 3-year terms on Microsoft 365 and Office 365. At the moment, the most you can buy is a year paid up front, but they're changing that so you can commit yourself to multiple years. If you don't commit to a long-term or an annual agreement, a monthly by month license, so where you buy an Office 365 license for the first of the month and you use it to the 30th of the month, that monthly term will have a premium price associated with it, whereas a yearly commitment or a multi-year commitment will not have that premium associated with it. The idea being that your annual terms will provide you with stability and predictability. However, they have a limit around where you can scale up and scale down your licenses. So whereas currently with your monthly license, you can turn a license off at any point and you're pro-ratally charged for the days that you've used of that license, Microsoft will no longer let you do that under NCE. So as soon as you turn off a license, it will still be charged to the minimum term that you've agreed to for that license. So for example, if you've purchased a monthly license, you will have to pay the remainder of that month. So it could be 15 days, 10 days, whatever's left of that month, you'll be charged for, even though you won't be using the license. If that license is on a year agreement and you've only used 6 months, you'll still be charged for the additional 6 months. So the annual terms come with a minimum seat cap, which is what you're agreeing to when you sign up to it. Now, Microsoft appreciates that's a massive change in approach. So what they're doing is allowing you to blend long and short-term commitments under a single agreement. So you can have some users who maybe you have a lot of staff that join you in December for your Christmas period, and they need licenses, but they disappear off in the end of January. So you can buy those licenses on a monthly agreement, whilst the rest of your base can be on an annual agreement, which you keep in place year round. It gives you flexibility still, and you don't take the price premium of keeping everyone on monthly, but you also manage that flexibility out. They're going to enforce a 72-hour cancellation policy. So this is a big thing for us as Planet and for you as a customer, because what it will mean is if you want to get rid of a license and it's on a monthly rolling agreement, you have 72 hours from the point that the renewal starts to terminate that license. Now, that 72 hours is straight hours. It's not business hours. It's literally straight hours. So 3 days you've got to tell Planet, and then thus we remove those licenses from Microsoft. If that doesn't happen, what will then take place is you will be charged for that license for the remainder of the term that you've agreed to. So it's going to be critical to manage licenses. Now, we're going to work with our customers, and we're going to be there to say to you, look, you've got these licenses coming up for renewal at the end of the month, the end of the year, whatever that agreement type is. Do you want to continue to use them? Do they need to flex up, flex down? You tell us, so that when we hit that 72-hour window, we can make those changes and you're not charged for them. Microsoft are also going to limit trials. So at the moment, it's very easy for you to go, oh, I'm on business standard. I'd like to try business premium for a few weeks. When that trial runs out, you move back to your standard. After a few months, you can go and try premium again. Microsoft aren't going to let you do that anymore. You'll be a single trial. So you'll be able to try on your tenant EMS, or try business premium, or try E3, E5. Once you've tried them, you can't try that SKU again. And likewise, if you try like something like an E5, you won't then be able to try an E3 next month, because Microsoft are aware that people were using that to get around paying certain license types and moving people between trials. There's also going to be an enforced SMB restriction. So at the moment, if you are over 300 users, then you're required by Microsoft to start buying enterprise licenses, or the E licenses as we refer to them. Now, what we can do at the moment is we can sell you 299 business standard licenses, and then your 300th user, we then sell you on an E3 license. And then as you continue all the way through 305, 306, they continue to grow on the E number whilst your base stays on that business standard at 299. Now, Microsoft are stopping that. So when you hit 299 and want to buy your 300th license, they will make you transition the entire lot across to an enterprise level license of its equivalent standard. Now, that transition will be done without you needing to worry about the cancellation policy. That's something that Microsoft are going to support you scaling up and cancelling those standard licenses and upgrade. But you need to be aware that you won't be able to mix and match like you may be at the moment. And there will be new contractual commitments. Now, this goes all the way through. It'll be an agreement between ourselves and you, which says you're agreeing to the minimum number of seats for the term that you sign up to. There's also an agreement now between us and Microsoft, which says that we agree to pay for all the seats regardless of whether you pay us or not. And then likewise, they're going to enforce those terms down. So it's a lot tighter than it used to be. There was a lot of agreements in place where it was kind of assumed that because everything was prorated and we could cancel licenses off, that actually if we knew there was a problem and you weren't going to be able to pay, we could turn your licenses off, and therefore everyone kind of limited losses. Well, now Microsoft are going down the hard and fast legal contract they expect everyone to sign. So we will be getting those out to all of our customers. If you're already with us, you'll be asked to sign a new contractual commitment under the NCE terms, which will reflect Microsoft's terms. And this will be the same if you're buying from any partner at all. They'll be required to follow through that contractual commitment with you.
So we've spent a lot of time with our licensing partner to make sure we're ready to support you through this change. So let's go through some key dates. If anyone was on the last webinar, you might see this slide. There's some things that have changed on this slide. The key thing being the dates. Microsoft, they tend to move the goalposts pretty much whenever they like. So they have already changed the date since our last webinar, which was, I don't know, about 4 weeks ago. So yeah, we'll run through them again. So the 26th of October, obviously that's today. That's when we're presenting this solution to you to let you know of the changes and what you need to do moving forward. The 14th is the expected go live date of the NCE. I say expected because, as I say, Microsoft have already changed this one. So I'm not going to say likely, but there's the chance that they may change this again. At this point, existing licenses will still be valid and you won't see a price increase yet. However, new licenses or subscriptions only have until the 31st of December before they can only be purchased under an NCE and the new associated SKUs. On the 31st of December, if you don't want your price to rise, you want to get your CSP agreement in by then, because the price lock is only valid up until then. Note that this date was the 17th of October, so they really have moved it forwards. And then March 2022, that's the all-important date. You'll keep hearing us talking about this one. This is the date that CSP pricing will jump up by. It was about around 20%, we reckon, if you haven't made an agreement by then, by the 31st of December. This includes all legacy licenses that were purchased prior to the 14th of November. At this point, if you haven't moved to NCE, you will have up to a year from the original date of the purchase before all your subscriptions are moved over to NCE. However, this may happen sooner as Microsoft have not confirmed the final cutoff date for this.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. As Adam mentions, obviously Microsoft have shuffled these dates, and it was literally 5 hours after we finished our last webinar, they released a press statement to change the date. So we're anticipating that we're going to trigger that change again today. So expect an update following this email. So I suppose what's important is to understand how this experience looks. So if we talk about a current experience, we've got an annual term for seats based on the fact you can cancel them anytime, you can add and reduce seats at no additional cost to yourself, and you pay for the days that you use. So it's pro-rata. So if you add a license on the 28th of a month, you get, it's only a 30-day month, you only get billed for 2 days. You don't get billed for the days you physically couldn't have used the license. Now with the move to NCE, this changes. So short-term commitments, so your monthly licenses, they will give you the flexibility. You'll still be able to add seats at any time. You will be charged for a 30-day block from the day you add them. So if you add them on the 28th, you'll get billed for the following 30 days for that license. It's short-term, it's flexible. At the end of that 30 days, you can cancel that license. You cannot cancel it mid-term and save money. So if you only need it for 10 days, after those 10 days, you cancel it, you still bill for those 30 days. It's really important that you understand that there's no get out of that. You will be charged for that full term. You then have the 1, 2, and 3 year agreements, or the multi-year commitments from Microsoft. And this is where you're saying, I'm going to have 300 seats on Office 365 E3 for the next 1 year. By doing that, Microsoft will lock in the price that you're paying for the next 1 year. They will still bill you monthly. You can add licenses, so you can go from 300 to 301. But when you do that, 301 then becomes your base commitment. So every time you add, you're committing to extending that. So if you only actually need a short-term license, then you'll do the blend and you'll add a short-term commitment alongside your yearly commitment. If you're upping your yearly commitment, you are committing to a full additional 12 months at that seat count. So it's really clear that Microsoft are trying to tie people in. Now, I've been asked a couple of times, why has this happened? And the reason this has happened is because of the furlough schemes and the shift of staffing back in March 2020. So Microsoft saw a dramatic drop in 365 usage where businesses were essentially suspending licenses because their staff weren't working or were put on furlough. And what this meant was Microsoft still have to commit to keeping the systems running to be able to deliver that scale that you need, but they weren't being paid for it. So with this approach, they are guaranteeing the revenue and they're guaranteeing that they're being paid for the services they're provisioning. So, should we hit another furlough scheme in the future and you're in the middle of a multi-year commitment, you're not going to be able to drop those licenses off during that time. You're committed, you have to continue to pay them. So it gives Microsoft some scale and predictability, which is why they've approached it in that way.
So let's have a little look at a brief look at the upgrade and downgrade options with both the current legacy subscriptions and the NCE subscriptions. With the old one, as in legacy, you can upgrade your current subscription level and also buy a new subscription at a lower level and cancel your current one if you wish. Also, if you assign and remove users at will, you will decrease your license counts. You only ever get charged for the number of days you use pro rata. But with the NCE, you are free to upgrade your subscription whenever you need, but once you have upgraded, you have 72 hours to cancel and revert back. I know James alluded to this earlier, if you need to. After this time, you can upgrade, but you cannot downgrade until the end of your term. You will be charged until the end of the period for any decrease, so be aware that pro rata costs are all gone. So let's talk a little bit about price protection, because obviously this is affected as well. So at the moment,
with Microsoft, if you buy a license today or previously, from the day that you added that license to your subscription, you had 12 months of price protection. So Microsoft would guarantee you they would not increase the SKU that you were purchasing, unless of course they added features to it, etc., and it changed. When it went from Office 365 to Microsoft 365, there was some changes, but generally if it's on the same license type, you had the 12 months of guarantee, and you were not charged for any suspensions. So if you suspended a license because you no longer needed it, they stopped charging you for it. That was the way that the price protection and suspension worked. But under NCE, as I've mentioned, your price protection is only to the end of the term you sign up to. So if you sign up to a monthly agreement, you only get 30 days of price protection. So if between the 1st of January and the 1st of February, the price for E3 goes up 27% because something massively happens, the dollar changes, you will be charged at that new value from the 1st of February if you're on a monthly agreement. We cannot change that. The prices will be passed on to us and they automatically get passed on to you. If you're on an annual or a multi-year agreement, you will get the price lock for that term. So say you sign up to an NCE agreement day dot for 3 years, you'll pay that price for that full 3 years of protection. So Microsoft could increase that 40, 60, 200%. You would not see that price increase. Likewise, if they ever did decide to do a price decrease, they don't pass those on either. They've never done a price decrease, but I have to tell you that they don't pass those on. Obviously, if you suspend a subscription now, though, you are still going to be charged for it. So suspensions are no longer a suspension of charges, they're just a suspension of services. So you'll remove the right to change anything that's inside that service. So if you suspend someone who's got an E3, their OneDrive will be held in state as it stands, but you won't be able to change anything on there until you reactivate the subscription, but you're still paying for it and until the end of that term. Obviously, with a suspension at the end of the month, it will then go to a deleted license, and obviously then the following process will take place for the removal of data. So I've mentioned a lot. So what I've done is we've put it into a, say simple, it's a very graphic heavy, but it's a simple cheat sheet for how to understand this. So if we look at this, starting with the monthly subscriptions. So initially, I'm going to buy 10 licenses of Microsoft 365 Business Standard. Now, I can decrease those by 5 seats mid-term. However, my invoice to the end of the 30 days will still be for 10 seats. At the end of the 30 days, I will then start being charged 5 seats for every month thereafter. If I choose to change my mind and actually increase the seats, I can do this at any time, but from the minute I press that increase button, my minimum count increases. So if I got up to 11, 12, 13, 14 licenses, that is my minimum seat count for that monthly term. If I decide I need to downgrade because we're getting rid of some staff or some staff have left us, I have that 72-hour window initially from my first purchase to cancel the additional licenses. I can cancel them at any point during the 30 days, but if I cancel them during those 30 days, I'm still charged until the end of that period. Anything that I do in terms of the downgrade, I then have another 72 hours at the start of the next 30 days to make that change and not be charged for the remainder of the month, and that repeats on until the end of time. The same applies to the cancel and suspension. You've got that 72-hour window, and that is at the start of every billing month. And then my price protection, as I said, it runs for 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, the new price will kick in there for each month after, so it will continue to grow in value. As Adam mentioned, we currently are seeing that the monthly licenses will be around a 20 to 26% increase versus your current build rate, depending on what licenses you buy. Now, we have got a price book for that, and your account manager can go through with you and tell you where they think the prices are going to be. They're not fully confirmed yet until that license launches, but we do have that initial estimate from Microsoft now as to where those charges will be. The anticipation is, however, that the annual licenses will be the same price as the current monthly is. So if you're currently paying £3.81 for an E1 license, it will go up by 20% if you stay monthly, but it will stay at £3.81 if you move to an NCE annual subscription. So to go through how an annual process works, obviously, if you add 10 licenses initially and you want to decrease mid-term, you can decrease at any point, but again, you're charged to the end of the year for that license. So if I turn it off for, 30 to 15 days into month one, then I'm going to pay for the rest of that remaining year for those licenses, even though I'm not using them. So actually, decreasing licenses on an annual subscription becomes pretty pointless, to be honest, until the end of your license term, because you're going to just continue to be charged those services. I can obviously increase at any point, just like I can at the moment, but as I said, it will increase your minimum seat count to the level that you therefore increase, and by that regard, you're obviously moving up to a larger subscription size. Your downgrade has that same 72-hour window, but it's only repeated at the end of every term. So you have 72 hours at the start of the subscription, and then 72 hours in 365 days to then go and make those changes. Same for your suspension and cancellation. We can cancel a license at any point in that initial window. After that, the cancellation would not do anything other than continue to charge you, but remove the licenses. And your price protection kicks in and lasts the full term of that agreement, and then at the end of that agreement you then get charged your new price. And if that's a 12-month, 24-month or 36-month, that point where you get the new charge just drops onto the very end of that. But the same for the cancellation and suspension, they will be pushed to the end of your term, not at the end of the year.
So we've spoken about enterprise agreements briefly a couple of times already. I'm sure there's a few of you on here. If you're more than 500 users, you'll probably have an enterprise agreement in place. So here are a few things you need to know from March 2022. The minimum seat count for an enterprise agreement is increasing from 500 to 2,400. If you have less than that, you have no choice but to move to CSP. If you are a 1,200 user organization, for example, and you currently have an enterprise agreement, you will have to move to CSP moving forward. Note that it may be possible to terminate an enterprise agreement early and take advantage of the price lock-in cut-off date of the 31st, but you will incur a 25% early termination fee of the remaining subscription value. Microsoft Azure services, when on an enterprise agreement, require a new minimum transaction value, previously known as the Azure Monetary Commitment SKU, which is the minimum spend in Azure. This is a use it or lose it cost, and it is a commitment from an enterprise to leverage Azure. So if your enterprise is over 2,400 seats, but you don't want to use Azure in any way, then an enterprise agreement may not be the right choice for you. Your enterprise agreement is also locked to a single yearly decrease, which means if you're 5,000 users and you need to drop to 4,800 because you are downsizing, and then 3 months later you need to drop to 4,500, you won't be able to do this, as the initial drop to 4,800 will be the only time in a year you can decrease. This removes the flexibility that you had with EA agreements previously. And then finally, it's worth noting that you are still responsible for the true-up charges at the end of each year with an enterprise agreement, which could mean you are paying more in the long run if you overuse your subscription.
So if you're not on an enterprise agreement, you may well have an open agreement, which is obviously the smaller side of things. So Microsoft are changing open agreements as well. So I've got kind of a before and after scenario for you in terms of the way that open agreements are going to work. So as of the 31st of December, open agreements end in the way that we know them now. So up until that point, you can continue to buy new software licensing and new online services through open agreements. But as of the 1st of January, you won't be able to do this. Software assurance as a service will continue to run until the 31st of December. As of that point, you will not be able to purchase software assurance anymore, so that won't exist as a service for you to purchase on open agreements. So although a new form of open agreements will exist in January next year, it won't be somewhere you can add in a software assurance agreement to. Now, if you don't know what software assurance is, this is the ability for your organization to purchase, for example, Server 2012, but then upgrade to 2016, 2019, 2022 while you have an active software assurance agreement in place. It also gives you the ability to, if you have a disaster recovery cluster, use your active licensing to cover that as well without having to double your licensing up. Now, after the 31st of December, all of your new licenses which would have gone through an open agreement will go via CSP. So you actually won't go to a different portal anymore. All of your licenses will appear inside 365, as do everything else. And you will see those in there, and it'll be a termed, you will see the Windows Server, whatever you've purchased. But when you purchase it, it's the version that you're purchasing you will see. So you will see Windows Server 2022 in there as a line. You won't see Windows Server with all the options you can download beneath it. If you have an existing software assurance agreement, that will naturally come to its end. So what that means is it's actually changed slightly from when we first ran this webinar. But what it means is that if you currently have software assurance that's due to expire in 2022 or 2023, you can continue to leverage that service up until the point that that expires. You will then not be able to renew it. So if your business is reliant on software assurance to be able to operate in the way that it does, then you have between now and the end of that agreement to resolve how you're going to license moving forward. And obviously all online services will have to go via CSP, and they won't be considered to be open. It's one of those things where, although Microsoft have tried to make this clear, they're still using the term open license around the place. It's really, the way to look at it is a CSP license. It's going into your cloud service provision. It will be sold via a partner like Planet IT into your CSP licensing. It won't go into a separate portal in the way that it does at the moment, and you won't be able to add software assurance to it.
And finally, let's talk a little bit about the shared responsibility model that generally comes with all of the Microsoft software as a service bits. So we'll talk about Microsoft first. We'll talk about the bottom bit first, actually. I'll do this graphic the other way around. So applications, obviously you've got your Outlook, your Excel, your Word, etc. That's Microsoft's responsibility. They've provided that application for you to use to access that their services, and it's supported by them. It's their responsibility to make it work. And as the software as a service model, networking controls are managed by the provider. Again, this case is Microsoft, as is the operating system that is running on the physical hosts. And of course, the physical host, physical network, and a physical data center, that's all stuff that's owned by Microsoft, and therefore it's managed by Microsoft. So yeah, so it's worth mentioning actually that Azure, if you have any data in Azure, they keep at least 3 copies of your data. So if one of their hosts goes down, you don't lose anything. So the shared responsibility model in the middle. So services such as Azure AD provide capabilities such as multi-factor authentication, which if anyone's seen me on a webinar before, they know I'm a big fan of that. Identity protection and role-based access control. Azure AD also provides the ability to provision on-premises and third-party applications. However, Microsoft require customers to configure and manage the identity and access controls within 365. Solutions such as Azure AD support identity and access management, or IAM, for resources within the tenant are provided by Microsoft, but they must be configured by you, the customer. And finally, your responsibility. So of course, your info and data, you must manage, classify and configure the solutions to address the unique security and compliance requirements. So, natively 365, they don't really offer any backup solution that you might get with a third-party application. SharePoint and OneDrive, you've got the recycle bin, but you've only got 14 days, and then you can get it back up to 30 days, but once it's gone, it's gone. Same with devices. You're responsible for the mobile devices or any devices really that access 365. It's your responsibility as a business to make sure they're compliant, they're up to date, they're working well, and the accounts and identities, and then the security as well. I mean, you're responsible for managing who has global administrator access to certain things and who has access generally across the board. And then security, the 365 do offer some security tools, but your best place getting an email security gateway or a data loss prevention solution, it should be added for the extra protection. So it's something you should really think about.
I suppose, Adam, the big point that Microsoft wants us to push home with this slide, isn't it, is that there is a shared responsibility with 365. when just because you're getting software as a service and the terms are changing doesn't change the responsibilities. And I think it's quite clear to Microsoft that some people don't understand that the backup of the data, the security of the data, and the compliance and the protection of the physical devices that access the data isn't Microsoft's problem. It's something they pass on to you. They will make sure their systems are running, but they expect you to look after those pieces, which is why they enable third-party tools to integrate with 365. It's just making sure you're aware of this, and that's why they've asked us to talk about it today. It's just to make sure we're tapping that piece off. I suppose that's kind of an ideal place now to drop into our Q&A section. So I'm going to swap screens so I can see the Q&A. If you've got questions, feel free to add them, and then what we'll do is we will work our way through them. So the first question we've got is, does this affect not-for-profits or education? Unfortunately, this does. This is going to go across the board. So if you're in a non-for-profit organisation or you're working in education at the moment, you will have noticed that Microsoft have slowly started eking up the price on your agreements, and they are continuing to do that. So they will reflect the changes for the 365 licensing, as it were. So if you're on an agreement, those will change. If you're not on an agreement, you're paying monthly, they will increase. Now, it's not as dramatic because obviously Microsoft do swallow some of the cost for that, but there still will be a price increase. If you know what specific licenses you're buying, if you reach out to your account manager, they will be able to tell you what those price differences are. So I've got a question around what would you consider a small company for buying via 365. So Microsoft consider anyone buying Web Direct, they're looking for anyone that's 10 users or less to be buying via Web Direct moving forward. Anyone who's over 10 users or 10 licenses, they expect you to go via a CSP partner. And the reason really for that is because ultimately the first line support then comes to us as a responsibility, and we only escalate to Microsoft when it's an issue that we can't resolve because it's a back end, back into that shared responsibility model. It's a problem for them that we need to pass on. So that's generally where you find they're drawing that line. Now, they will share, if you're below that count, they will start emailing the admin account on that tenant to say, just so you know, we'd like you to move across, and suggest a list of partners and how you move. It is a painless process in terms of moving you across from direct from Microsoft to us, but it is one of those things that you need to be aware of. So a question around increases on annual subscriptions. So if you're in a 12-month term and then you add additional licenses, will this start a new 12-month term? And the question is, it's a little bit difficult. So the answer is a little bit complicated. So the way Microsoft are drawing this line at the moment is, if it's below a 25% change, it should literally be an add that will go to the end of your term, existing term. So say you're at 100, you go to 125. At 125, you will continue for the 12 months that were started as 100 users. If you go to 150, then that starts a new 12-month term. Now, as we said at the start, Microsoft are moving the goalpost for this. That's changed since we initially spoke to everyone about this, where it was going to be, if you add one license, then you're going to go onto a new term for 12 months from when you add that 101 user. And they said 25%. Now, I expect more guidance to be released around this in the next kind of 6 to 12 months. As we get into the NC launching in March, that's when we should see the final terms. It's still a little bit fluffy for our liking. We have been pushing Microsoft quite hard for an answer, but as soon as we get a hard and fast in writing answer, it's definitely going to be 25%, 50%. We'll share that, but at the moment we're working to the basis of it's a 25% change that will start a new term. So I was looking for some additional questions. So going back to those kind of questions around discounts and anything that you'll currently get on a discounted license from Microsoft, these all will be increasing. There's no price protection for any license, and the justification from Microsoft is that the product hasn't had a price increase for around 8 years, and in the last 8 years they've added 28 products to what you get as part of your license subscription. So the product stack has grown dramatically. However, the realism of it is we are aware that it will be a big price increase, and for some businesses it's going to be difficult to manage. What we really want to express with this is that if you can make sure you're speaking to your account manager from Plant IT as soon as possible, we will work with your particular use case. And if there's something that doesn't make sense, so you currently have a license which is of a really good value because you're non-for-profit and it's not going to be good value moving forward, we can raise that case with Microsoft. But if we wait until March, there won't be any room to make changes to this. Whereas at the moment, Microsoft are very much listening. As we said after the last webinar we did, there was a lot of feedback of negativity. We fed this back to Microsoft, and then since then they've actually made some delays and some changes. So they are listening to this. They know it's a big change, and that I get they're trying to do what they can to protect their business, but they also want to work with you. So the following question I've got here is, can businesses between 100 and 300 commit to a 36-month period? You certainly can do. You can. The problem will be you'll be able to commit to 299 licenses of one type and one license of another type if you're 300. If you commit to a 36-month term and then you need to grow, Microsoft will let you break out of that term to then upgrade from an SMB license to an enterprise license. So they are going to allow you to do long-term commitments, even though you may need to move to a bigger agreement. That's the one case where, as Adam highlighted on his slide, that they will let you move up the chain because they're aware that that's a case where you need to move with their compliance requirements. So very much we'll work around that. Yes, questions around recording. This webinar has been recorded and will be shared out. It normally takes around a day or so for the recording just to get chopped up. So my mumbling gets taken out at the start and at the end, but you will get sent that. So anyone who's registered today via their email to be here will get this automatically sent out to them. If you don't receive that, reach out to your account manager and they can share the link with you. It normally goes onto our blog and onto our social media at the same time as well, so you can find that content as well. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is just going to move this forward, as I'm very aware of the time. If you do have any further questions after we finish today, feel free to reach out. I suppose one of the things that we're trying to do to help people is we're aware this is a massive change. So we have a service that we run, which is a Microsoft 365 health check. It's one of the things that Adam and my team do, and that's very much around helping you be supported with what you are using your licenses for, where your licenses are, around your security needs, data protection, backup, and all those kind of pieces. We normally would charge for this service. It takes a few hours for us to do this process. For anyone who's attended today, if your business would like to have one of these reviews, if you reach out to your account manager, they will be able to book one of these in before the end of November for you to give you a review, to show you where you are, and ultimately we can help guide you then to what the best solution will be for you around NCE. We can share pricing and work together on a collaborative approach to make things easier for you.
Worth mentioning as well, sorry James, just worth mentioning, we do have a sample report that we can send out. So if you're looking at this thinking, yeah, do you know what, it's probably a good idea, I'm not really sure if it's going to add any value, just reach out. We've got the sample report that we can send to you so you can look at it and you can see this is the kind of information I will get effectively for free for 2 or 3 hours of my time. So there you are. Cheers, Adam, for that. Appreciate it. I suppose coming on from trying to help you out, one of the things obviously with Microsoft asking us to talk about the shared responsibility model is that we're aware that Microsoft are putting a big emphasis on the fact that they don't put security natively in front of your 365 platform. They don't do backup of your data, of your email natively. They give you a minimum backup requirement, that 14 days recovery, but ultimately it's your responsibility. And they don't control your devices. They make that very much your responsibility. So what we've tried to do at Planet is we've worked with our team to put together some bundles where we can offer you
the 365 licenses you buy at the moment, as well as email security for Planet Secure Email, bundled together for a single monthly price per user. So you add a single license, it gives you both products and you're protected. And we've scaled that out for the Planet Total Protect, where we've added cloud backup to it. So this is anywhere cloud. Anytime cloud, so it's a never-ending pool of storage you've got to back up all of your 365 data. So that's your OneDrive, your SharePoint, your Teams data, your email. That will all be swallowed up by that. But again, it's a single monthly purchase, so you're just purchasing a Planet Total Protect license. And then the Planet Total Protect and Control license, which will also include device management. So the idea being that we can fill those gaps in with you that Microsoft don't naturally fill in. It's a single price. We can also do these on the same terms as you would do with your with the NCE agreements. So we can do them as a 1, 2, or 3 year commitment up front to reduce those. To reduce the cost and give you a committed price for 3 years. So if you'd like more details about how those bundles work and the services that are involved in that, then do reach out to your Planet IT account manager, who will be able to guide you through those new packages and how we're going to make those work for you. If you do have any technical questions, anything you think I really should have asked that, I didn't get that question in, my email address is there, my telephone number's there, give me a shout. I'll do my best to answer your questions. If I can't answer your questions, I'll take them straight to Microsoft and we'll get you a response, because I know some of these scenarios are unique and that's always a problem for us. We don't know the answer to everything. We try to, but no one can be perfect. So outside of that, I'd like to thank you very much for giving me nearly an hour of your time today, and I hope you have a good afternoon. And I say, if you do have any questions, reach out to myself, to Adam, or to your Planet IT account manager. Thank you very much.